Responsible for all those hit musicals, Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber. Sir Andrew, when your shows have crossed all boundaries, been seen in practically every country in the world, when you're sitting down to write the next musical, who are you writing it for?
I always write them for me, nobody else. I mean, it's just been great that the thing that I enjoy doing so much is I've been as lucky as I have been with. I just love writing the things.
Does it get easier?
No, it never gets any easier. I mean, each one is always a different special case. I'm doing one called Whistle Down the Wind at the moment, which is a very special case for me because it could be a film or it could be a stage show. And I'm not quite sure which way I'm going to jump yet. And I've nearly finished that, and the old theatre side of me is sort of taking over again, so I guess it probably will go to the theatre.
Really? So at this stage you still don't know, even though you're busy writing? It doesn't alter the way you would write something, then, whether it be for a film or for the stage?
Well, there are certain things that I think you can do in the cinema that you couldn't do in the theatre, and vice versa. There are certain things, definitely, that work in the theatre that I don't think would work on screen. But I think I might try and do both. I mean, it'd be quite fun. It'd be a real dream to see if you could have a film and a theatre show open in the same week.
If Whistle Down the Wind happens, and it will, we know, when will we see it?
Well, I would guess, I mean, knowing how these things evolve, probably it'll be the sort of spring of '97. Because I've got a lot of other things I'm doing next year. I'm doing a version of a show called By Jeeves, which is one of the Woodhouse stories, which is a
Now, I remember Jeeves.
Fun. Yes, well, it was a disaster.
Back in the 70s.
Absolute disaster, so I'm having a crack at it again. Yes. And we're doing it with no sets.
Really?
Yes.
Just Jeeves himself?
Well, just bare stage and costumes.
That'll be something very different. Going back to something which is hardly a bare stage, and there are certainly costumes, Cats. I think there are currently 9 versions playing throughout the world. Are they all carbon copies of each other?
Well, no, they're not, in the sense that they're in different buildings, and Cats is a show that you can't exactly duplicate in every place. But it's the same production, basically. Yes, it is basically the same production.
How do you keep tabs on all your shows and make sure that they're up to the standard that you would require? I personally
can't, obviously, keep tabs on them all. I mean, we've got, I think, just about 39, I think it's 39 musicals running around the world in first-class productions, which are produced by my company. So the company actually does an awful lot of it. I mean, for example, with every single different production will have its own production musical supervisor who will be responsible to the company's musical supervisor. And we have somebody, they will always report to me. I mean, I've got Sunset Boulevard opening in Germany on Friday, so I'm going out tomorrow to do the final orchestral rehearsal and to take all of that. So I'm always on the case of a new major one opening.
Do you get a chance to see other people's musicals?
I do, yes. I'm not a great... I don't greatly enjoy going to too many shows these days. I sort of find I like to pursue sort of other interests. I'm a great interest in art and everything. I find kind of slightly overtakes sometimes. But I always like to see what's going on. Sadly, there aren't enough new musicals these days. I mean, one of the great worries, I think, for musical theatre is the lack of new writers. And I keep thinking that, you know, it's a long time since I started, and there haven't really been any major new writers who've sort of stuck. It just doesn't seem to have happened, and
so
I can't understand
it. So what can we do about that? How is talent fostered?
I fund something called the National Youth Music Theatre, which I took to Broadway, and they did wonderfully well there with a musical that they had actually themselves created, hoping that, you know, a lot of American young writers would come out. And, you know, the response is a bit disappointing, really. We haven't really found anything that fantastic yet.
Maybe it's going to take a little longer to sort of regenerate.
But the main thing you see is that people have got to know, young writers have got to know that they're going to get their work performed, because it's only by having a work performed in musical theatre that you can find out the many, many pitfalls there are.
Yes. If you had to choose one of your songs, just one, to leave as a legacy to the nation, just supposing, hypothetically, which one would it be? Oh,
it's very difficult for me.
I know, that's
I have... You know, I have a couple of favourites. I'm very fond of the melody of All I Ask of You. But I think perhaps, in a strange way, the Pie Jesu I wrote for the Requiem Mass, I think it's one of the things I'm most pleased with, I think.
Let's move on to Evita, the movie. 17 years since it hit the West End, took us by storm. A lot of those years have been filled with speculation about who would eventually play the lead role in the movie. Why Madonna, eventually?
Well, first... Evita is one of the things that I don't really have anything to do with, in the sense that Tim Rice and I sold it a long, long time ago. So when it came to the casting, I mean, we obviously had, you know, our say in it, but finally, at the end of the day, it's somebody else's movie. And I think it's a very, very good idea. It's a particularly good idea thinking about it because, in theory, if it all works, so they haven't started filming yet, but if it all works, she is absolutely a role model for it. I mean, if you think about it, Madonna, Evita, it does fit.
Except that I suppose when you've got a marvellous supporting cast, Antonio Banderas, Jonathan Pryce, Jimmy Nail, wouldn't it have been a prime opportunity to go to Argentina and find your new star for the movie?
I think that would have been difficult because I don't think the movie would have got off the ground, from what I gather, if they hadn't had somebody of Madonna's kind of name. Because it's a very expensive film, and a lot of it, you know, is expensive because it's been hawked around for so long, or passed from studio to studio to studio to studio.
Do you find it frustrating that you seem to be suggesting that you don't have much say in the casting of something like the role of Evita? Is that frustrating for you?
Well, in a sense, it is. In a sense, it isn't. I mean, the reason I set up my own company in the end was because I wanted to be able to control, you know, the productions a lot more closely and carefully. I mean, I think, though, with Evita, they've got a very, very good team of people on it. It's directed by Alan Parker, who is probably the best director for musicals in the cinema around. But I think it's interesting because it's uncharted water. There hasn't been a film musical for so long. It's got to be really 30 years since the last really big hit, that you can't just sort of say, let's go to X or Y, or for advice or anything, because they're just not around anymore.
No. How's it going? What stage in production are we at now?
Well, this is a voyage of discovery for me because, again, I'm not really that much involved with it because I'm learning now exactly what they do. A lot of it's pre-recorded so that Madonna, for example, is laying down tracks at the moment, and then she eventually either sings again to the tracks when they're being done, when they're being filmed, if you can get the sound quality right, or she mimes to the tracks that have been laid down. Or what they do at the end of the day is she might do a performance that they might want to work on, and then they would do it after the movie's been made.
It's long and complex
very technical,
process.
and it's something which I've never been involved with before, so I'm looking sort of from the outside with great interest.
Yes, I'm sure, as are we all. Now, by way of introducing Andrew's latest venture, I'd like you, first of all, to take a little look at this.
And you can bet it's the fastest game you've ever played. And it's just like the real thing. And it's blue ribbon on the inside. And all the favourite stumbles. And the bookies are laughing now. And it's Red Sunset neck and neck with Black Humour. And it's Red Sunset. No, now it's Black Humour by a nose.
Confused? It'll all become very clear now when I introduce you to Charlie Brooks. I just point out here that Charlie Brooks, amongst many other things, is Sir Andrew's personal horse trainer. And between the two of you, tell me how you came up with this board game.
It was about 2 years ago. Andrew, myself, and Madeline, Andrew's wife, were staying together in somebody's house the night before the Grand National, in which Black Humour was running. And we were having a pretty dull evening. And I thought I'd try and liven things up a bit. So I showed Andrew the basic idea of this game. And Andrew said, this is a very good idea, we could develop this and we could make it into something.
So how does what starts off as a party game, for about how many people, by the way?
You can play it from any number of people you like. I mean, literally 100 people could take part in any number of people.
If you've got the room for them.
But it's so simple, that's the thing. The joy of the game is it's the most simple thing. You can learn it in a minute, literally.
It sounds like my sort of game. How does a party game idea turn into a fully fledged board game, which now it is?
Well, it's just a question of doing a model of it, prototype of it, and then you get professional people who understand these things to play it, and they sort of give it marks out of 10 and say, and if you find that the buyers of various firms would like to have the thing, then you can go ahead. And we thought it was a great fun because in this case, I mean, I'm giving my bit of it away to the Animal Health Trust, which is a wonderful charity, particularly for we who do like our racing. They're very good news. So I thought it was fun just to go ahead and see what happens. I mean, we'll see.
I mean, it's an extraordinary. It's called And They're Off. I mean, if you think about Andrew Lloyd Webber inventing a board game, you'd think it would be to do with musicals and its horses. Where did the interest in horses begin?
Well, my wife was a three-day eventer professionally, and she's always had the interest in horses. And when we married, I mean, I very much wanted that to continue. So we started what is a young fledgling stud at our home in the country. Right. And so the interest in horses is sort of very much part of our life and all the way through.
Yeah. Well, you've given us some idea of how it works. Up to 100 people can play, but just as easily can 2 people play.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, that's a relief. That's
it's essentially, it's a gambling game, it's a betting game, because you're betting against what's going to happen with these horses.
Ah, right. So do you think more board games will follow, Andrew? Maybe musical
ones? I did
ones?
one rather aptly named called Calamity, which was about Lloyds of London, which I did about 20 years ago, and it seemed rather prescient, actually. It seemed rather ahead of its time. However, the game sold exactly 3 copies.
This one I think will do better. Well, thank you very much, because I know that you're going to give us some box sets of the game, signed sets, as part of our showbiz quiz. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for being with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Brooks and Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber.